can run, but you can't hide from the radio detective. Jerry Pierce, private investigator, president of the Pierce Corporation, and lifetime member of the law enforcement community, is the radio detective, catching bad guys on the run.
Okay, Jason, I'll do that. I'm Jerry Pierce, the radio detective. Welcome to the show. If you want to be a part of tonight's NRA show, it's where we talk about guns, gun control, and the creep in the White House. So pick any one of those you want to talk about. Welcome to tonight's show. Jason Cunning, the super producer's at the board, scraping together whatever watts we got left around here after that powerful news team finished. And we're going to bring you a little conversation and little music and little entertainment tonight. The beautiful Aulique is on the phone board, just dying to get your first telephone call tonight. She can't wait. Jason, wake her up. Tell her we're on the air. She's ready to roll right out there on the phones, and she's one of our support group here at the Radio Detective Show. And at 8 o'clock tonight, we're going to be joined by Madera County Sheriff, retired Sheriff Ed Bates. He wrote a deal for the newspaper up there in Madera and a few other newspapers, and he's going to talk about that in the 8 o'clock hour. You've heard Ed Bates on the show before, and he's one of the sharpest guys on the planet. Man, wasn't that a show last night, Jason?
Great show.
I mean, we had a hero, a bona fide hero in the studio last night, Guy Gabaldon, and he was just probably one of the most impressive men I've ever had a chance to be with. And I had him here 3 hours. If you missed that show, you missed listening to a guy that all service people look up to. He's renowned throughout. He's a legend in his own time, literally. Captured over 1,000 Japanese soldiers single-handedly. True story. I talked to a colonel before we had him on, and colonel was over there and knew of his exploits. And he said the guys showed up. They looked up on this ridge there on Saipan, and they had lost 8,000 servicemen, 8,000 Marines and servicemen hitting the beach there, and that was on the first day. And they got into the battle, and they looked up on the ridge and saw this one Marine up there, and you know, he's not a big guy, he's a fairly short guy, and standing there with his rifle, and he was surrounded by 800 to 900 of these Japanese soldiers. And so the one colonel turned to the major, and he says, well, there's that Marine, he's had it, he's a goner. They watched a little further, and all of a sudden, the deal was just the opposite. That little Marine was bringing those 800 prisoners down the mountain. He had arrested them, collared them, captured them. He killed also 33 in one day, single-handedly up there on that little deal in Saipan, and he's now one of the main guys on Saipan. The government there in the Marianas gave him his own island, as a matter of fact. He works with young people there on on drug abuse and all of that. He's quite a character and flies his own airplane, owns an airline, has been a, what?
I just wanted to let you know this is very important.
Yes.
I will be re-airing that fabulous interview yesterday on our encore presentation Saturday at 7.
Oh, thank you, Jason. That's a good idea, because if you missed the show last night, Saturday night it'll be on at 7 o'clock again. You need to listen to Guy Gabaldon, and he's a fantastic guy. I want to talk to you a minute before we get in. By the way, well, let me share this with you. Let me share a view that I have about this gun thing, okay, and police. I got hit on this a lot. Now, on this show, we're kind of pro-cop, and we hammer them around a little bit once in a while when I think they screw up, but, you know, they're a very special breed, these cops. I don't care whether they're deputy sheriffs or police officers, and I don't care whether they're men or women. I'm not talking about state agents and all that stuff here. I'm talking about your street cops, your local departments. And they get hit from all sides sometimes, and it's difficult. The job is difficult to begin with, and then it becomes more difficult when they get in the middle of political stuff, and that's their fault, you know. And back when I was in the business, we didn't have a union to start with, and we didn't get involved in politics. The sheriff in our department ran the show, and the standing orders were, we don't take sides in any political deal. We're above that stuff. Well, law enforcement has been drug into it now, and it's a part of the political scene. And so I get hit once in a while about why cops do things and the politics of things. And I just want to tell you that aside from that, the law-abiding citizens in this country, when it comes to guns, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight for a long time here, they're getting whipped to death. And they're getting whipped to death. I'm talking about the good guys are getting beaten up because of the acts of non-law-abiding citizens, in other words, criminals. And not only are we losing freedoms because of these criminals, but it's costing us a lot of money. I'm going to talk about this new program that Clinton came out with the other day in tonight's show. But as far as the police go, you got to understand that what we have the police in there to do is they're going to control things. And police departments will always be drawn to better control of people. And the reason for that is pretty simple. You know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that concept, that the police basic duty is to keep things under control. And they're only doing their job. And if their job is easier, more efficient, and more expedient because of the ability to control all persons, not just a few criminals, then that's the path they're going to be following. That's exactly what they're sucked into doing. Police use the law as a tool in accomplishing that job. And that's why the word law enforcement is in our vocabulary today. Now, the police are held to operating under the color of law. This isn't some third world country. And particularly in the United States, the law is very tough in some cases for the police to operate under and still keep the peace. But if there's no law, then there's no police action in this country. That's the way it goes down. But police work has now taken on an exclusive role of enforcing political policy couched as a law. And they don't have a choice. They just don't have a choice. And I'm going to tell you, you got to wake up to the fact that new laws passed are the laws to prevent, not to protect. There's no politician ever wanted to protect you from anything. A lot of prevention going on. A lot of prevention. These new laws are passing right now are out there to control you. And it's going to take away more and more of your rights in some aspect or another if we allow them to continue to do it. And they're passing laws that infringe, violate, and breach all of our constitutional guarantees in some cases, and yet they're watering that down. But the police can't be blamed. It's like District Attorney Ed Hunt was on the show, and he has sat here and said that a well-armed society is a safe society. He said that right on this program. But he also said that they're going to enforce the law. You know, the law is put in there by us, not the police. It's us that are allowing these representatives up there to pass these laws. Now, I'm a little disappointed in the police in that they don't stand up and say more about what they think is right and wrong. But you see, they belong to these unions. And these unions pushing the liberal candidates, they're pushing the liberal agenda all the time, these police unions. But I'm here to tell you that I know police officers and deputies. And the rank and file law enforcement officers are rarely in support of this liberal agenda and these liberal candidates. Rarely. But they've surrendered leadership to their unions. That's why they have that agenda. That's what's going on. And it takes a strong character in law enforcement, an officer to speak out against their union or to speak out against policies that generate from what the union does. Now, the officer's only acting as a human being does naturally. They're looking out for themselves first. We don't agree with that. I wish somebody would step out and let it get open on it, but they do. They look out for themselves. If they spoke out on what's really in their hearts and minds, their career could be threatened and their actual job sometimes endangered. That's what goes on in police work today. And the bottom line is that it's up to us not to let these laws be passed that'll end up in the hands of law enforcement. And I'm asking again for the support of law enforcement officers, chiefs of police and sheriffs and whatever, even the coppers on the beat, to speak up when they think something's wrong going into these deals. But they remain silent. They allow their name and their position to be used by politicians, claiming they have the support of this law enforcement group or that law enforcement group. When you go and talk to the guy on the beat and he says, that's a bunch of crap. And somewhere there's a breakdown here, but it's called politics, not law enforcement. and I'll get off this kick. But don't blame the cops. They're doing the job they're charged to do. We'll come back and talk some more about tonight's their night. We're going to talk about gun control and guns and some of the things going on there. And at 8 o'clock, I'm going to have Ed Bates join us. He's a retired sheriff from Madera County. And he's written a letter today that went out to some newspapers. And when Ed and I were kicking it around earlier, I said, Ed, you got to come on the show tonight. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about guns and gun control, maybe the Second Amendment a little bit. But I want to get your input tonight about some of the things happening in Washington, D.C. regarding the hiring of all these ATF agents. And plan is to hire 500 ATF agents and 1,000 prosecutors, federal, state, and local. 1,000 prosecutors. I'm going to cover that in a minute. I'm going to tell you this, though. Here's a fact. You know, the liberal gun control people, and I want to tell you more about who they are in a moment, but these gun control people don't like facts. They hate them. They can't stand facts because it goes in the face of everything they're pushing. And they're pushing stuff on a false premise. But one of the facts is, nationwide, firearm ownership increased tremendously between 1993 and 99. The U.S. News and World Report tracked that based on FBI stats. At the same time as the ownership of firearms increased greatly in this country, the homicide rate decreased by a little over 29% during the same period. Now that to me is fact that conclusively shows that firearms do not lead to higher homicide rates. Now, if you happen to be of the liberal persuasion, or you happen to advocate the control of guns because of all these homicides, would you call me and tell me how you figure that? I'm sincere about this. I'm not going to beat you up on the air. I would like to know how you figure, if the facts show the opposite, how having these weapons in these homes and these people's possession leads to higher homicide rates, unless there's a lot of bodies out there that we're not collecting. I'd like to know that, because it just isn't the facts. We're going to talk about gun locks a little later. That's the biggest scam on the face of the planet. That is also not supported by the facts. A little later in the show, I want to talk about a guy named George Soros in Russia, pouring millions of dollars into the state of California through his funds and different things that he's got set up. He's a billionaire set up around the world. He's a financier, throwing money into this country, but especially targeting California in the year 2000 to do two things: put gun control into effect and to legalize marijuana. Now, do you see a common denominator here anywhere? Behind the people behind this, what types they are? And you heard that little Marine sitting here last night talk to you about what's happening to the moral fiber of this country. He didn't mix any words. That's because he's a Marine. He's a Marine from the old school. He says it like he sees it. And what's that all about? What's happening to the moral fiber in this country? Why should we be ashamed to be religious if we are? The minute that I noticed lately, that the minute somebody goes out and tries to talk about religion, whichever one they want to have is their business, but they're labeled all of a sudden from the religious right. Well, what is the religious left? I'd like to know that. Why can't they just be religious? Where did the term religious right come from? And who picked up on that? And why are you ashamed? Why do you have to be ashamed of believing in God? I'm going to reach in my pocket here. I think I'm pretty sure on this. I'm going to pull out this dollar bill. Oh my God, it says right on the dollar bill, "In God we trust." I just happened to pull out a 5 says the same thing on the 5. What's that all about? How come they haven't got this money changed? My God, it can't say God on this dollar bill. Why do we have to be ashamed of the very thing this country is built on. You know, you don't have to be religious. You don't have to be a guy that sits around and like the monks do and all that, and not join in with what's going on in the world. But if you want to talk about your religion, you shouldn't have to cower back in the corner and do it for fear of having a finger pointed at you, that you're some kind of an outcast. Hell, the outcasts in this country ought to be these long-haired pukes running the show. They're the ones in the 60s was burning your flag. They're the guys that ought to be the outcast in this society. This thing's upside down. Anyway, got a caller waiting here, and I don't want to keep him waiting, but we'll get back to that. If you want to join the show, if you think I'm wrong, by the way, I'd love to have you join the show. Talk to me. I'm not going to beat up on you. I promise I'm the easiest guy on callers on the planet. If you're nervous about calling the show, I'll walk you through it. Hell, we got nervous around here ourselves sometimes, so don't worry about it. But give us a call, 252-1075. That's locally here in Fresno, California. Or toll free from anywhere in the state. 877-575-1075. On your cell phones, hit pound 1075 on the AT&T unit and star 1075 on the GTE system. And I'm dead serious. I need some input. I'm talking on behalf of the NRA tonight on this show. You are interested maybe in the NRA. I want you to join them. But at the same time, we're also talking about common sense. And this is your night to feed in some thoughts you have. I seem to be lost in some kind, trying to figure out where everything's going in this country. Gun control is only one issue, and it's not about guns. This is about controlling people. This is about running over people. And why do they want to take these guns? Why do they not want you to? You think it's going to help the school shootings? The facts say no. Is it going to make the streets safer? The facts say no. Those are the kind of things I want to, what's your input? Maybe you see it differently. Maybe you see it the same, but somebody needs to start speaking up on this issue. And in the year 2000, now's the time to do it. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting there and you're going to want to go deer hunting someday or out to target plink, and you're going to have to call them up and ask them permission to take your rifle out to your car and take it out to some place they want you to go. You're going to have passes and little chits we used to call in the Navy to move around. You know why I know that? Because Jim Hinner up in Canada, who was on my show, told me how it's going to go. You're going to have permission. You have to get permission to buy some bullets. They're going to be a certain kind of a bullet. All this stuff's coming if we don't stop it right now in California. And they've got to conquer California before they can get the rest of the country. So this is where the battleground is. And it's time for everybody to stand up and be counted. I'd like to hear from some women tonight. I'd like to hear from some women tonight about what they think about gun control. I've had women tell me, "Oh, Jerry, that's boring stuff." Well, I'm telling you, I need to know if women really think it's that boring. Is it not important to the housewives and the girls out there that are getting raped? Wouldn't they like to be in a position to defend themselves in their home if somebody comes in, or it's a wife and the husband's away on business or out doing his job somewhere? What's she going to do at home? On the way to work tonight, I just pulled into a little market out here in the north side of town called Ronnie's Midway Market. And I pulled in there 30 seconds after a guy robbed the place. It's too bad I wasn't 30 seconds earlier. I could have made a report to the police and say, "Jesus, officer, he was running at me, had a mask on and a gun in his hand." But I missed. Chances like that don't come too often, and I blew mine tonight, I guess, by being a little tardy there. But he robbed this store, and when I went up to the door, you've got these young girls in there, the clerks in the store, great people, and they're being held, they're crying, they're shaking. Now, that robber didn't shoot him. He got the money and ran. He didn't shoot him, but he damaged him for the rest of their life. They'll remember that. And so he hurt those people. Now, I'm telling you, that same robber's out there loose right now is the same guy that could come into your home at nighttime. And I ask this question every show. If you don't have a gun in the house and he comes in, what are you going to do? You're going to call the police? The police would love to be there to help you, but they're not going to be. It's up to you. It's time for you to be counted. If you're trying to protect your family and you're the man of the house, even though that's not politically correct anymore, you're the man of the house, what are you going to do? But suppose your husband's away. What are you going to do? I want to hear about that. Tonight's NRA night. Let's go to Bob in Fresno, California. Bob, welcome to the show, sir.
Hello, Jerry.
How are you?
Love your show.
Thank you.
Hey, you round up all those bills with In God We Trust, turn them over to me, and I'll take care of them.
I don't have that many right now, Bob, but I got a few here that does say that. I mean,
Oh, what? Turn them over to me.
I mean, what's going on with that? Everybody's down on God in the government up there, and the political correct thing is you shouldn't be mentioning it too, but it's on our every piece of money we've got, isn't it?
It's a mark of the times.
Yeah.
Anyway, Clinton's got a year to go, and I hear he's going to try and run through some gun control.
Yes, he is.
Now, I hate to help him out, but he's already chief law enforcement officer, isn't he?
Yep, supposed to be.
All he has to do is take all the guns from the police. Commander-in-chief in the military.
Yep.
All he has to do is take all the weapons away from the military.
Yep.
Give them apples instead.
Yep.
They can turf them at the enemy.
Yep. Yes, he's almost done that, you know.
Darn near.
I mean, he's broken the military down. We don't have much of a military left.
And
You
then
know, we got the kids out there, and I won't mention the place, but I know of a training ground, and these kids don't have bullets to practice with.
they use apples instead.
Well, that's the apples with a hand grenade deal.
There you go.
You know, but they don't have bullets either. They can't fire those weapons. But every I think it's one day a week in this one training area, they get some shells to fire. But that, you know how that goes. That's not enough training if you're going to go into combat.
And then the third one's a little more problem. Their executive order, he could say no more private ownership of guns.
Right.
And he could get the Chinese come in here as peacekeepers.
There you go. That's his buddies, you know. But Bob, well, on that subject of the Chinese.
State of emergency and cancel election. Say I'm going to stay on as Emperor, Chief, King of the USSR.
Yep, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, that's his main buddies, the Chinese. I'm asking questions on the show about that whole deal.
And you want to know why he wants to control guns?
Mm-hmm.
The only way to control the people.
Right.
Right now, if it's well-armed people, the United States would be very hard to occupy by any nation, by any army coming in.
Right.
The people that are armed will sort of take care of themselves. But if they have no weapons, there's nothing they can do.
Why can't people see that, Bob? Why can't they see, like Cuba? You know, the Cuba down there, why even that close to us, those people can't stand up to Castro and these people because they don't have any weapons. But why can't people see that?
I don't know. I'm a transplant Canadian.
Well, you know what's happening in Canada.
I sure do.
I had Jim Hinner on this program. He's with the Canadian Firearms Association. He described a horror story that's going on up there. And we used to look to Canada for, I mean, we thought that was hunting and the Sergeant King and his dog Preston and all that business, the rough outdoors and weapons and guns, and he says that all changed. He said this place up here is nothing, and there's no individualism left up there. You've got to go along with the program.
Oh, it was standard when I was up there that you carried the rifle in the back of your pickup, and it stayed there day and night.
Right, I know it. We did here in California, too. Guys ran around with the rifles up in the pickup. So,
would you leave your rifle in your pickup on the street here in Fresno?
No, not nowadays. You wouldn't. You wouldn't leave your pickup on the street in Fresno.
Not unless you were sitting in there holding the rifle.
You got that right, my friend. I got to take a break, Bob.
Okay, have a good one.
I will, and thanks for calling the show, my friend. That's Bob checking in from Fresno. Let's go to get back to the caller board here, and I'll quit talking so much, to Maria in Squaw Valley, California. Maria, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Good.
I'm calling because I just had my students do a debate on violence in our schools.
Yes.
And one of their major concerns was the fact that guns are so easy to get.
Right.
And, you know, they were majorly focusing on gangs, and I reminded them that most of this violence lately has not been gangs. It's been upper-middle-class kids.
Well, can I...
Sure.
Can I comment on that?
Mm-hmm.
That's not true. Most of the violence is gangs, but the violence you see on these outstanding cases are the upper-middle-class kids on television.
Mm-hmm.
But most violence, everyday violence, is gangs.
Right. Well, yes, but these kids, it's becoming a role model, and it's becoming a modeling, and that's been a real concern.
You're a teacher?
Yes.
Let me ask you this, Maria.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think part of the problem is that kids concentrate too much on themselves? think too much.
I think the problem is media is putting too much on violence.
Okay.
And the kids, that was their focus, too, that they came up with. It was really an interesting debate, and the kids they had to do a research paper on it first.
Right.
So it's really, I think that our society has, and I think you have to do with morals, I think that's true. We've put a lot of emphasis on violence. I mean, violence is everywhere. You can't turn on the television without finding violence anymore.
You're right.
I mean, nothing. It's either sex or violence. I mean, whatever happened to being able to have fun just for fun? I mean, you've either got to put cussing, violence, or profane sex. I can't even find decent movies that have real good messages without it having too much profanity or sex in it, and I can't even show it to my kids.
Well, let me just share with you, back in the 60s when I was in law enforcement, we booked them. We could book them for using foul language. And we did. Be in a restaurant, for instance, and my partner and I and maybe some other coppers would go in for a cup of coffee on this, whether we were patrol or detectives, didn't make any difference. And you may have some people sitting around in the booths, and they'd cut off with these four-letter words, and you'd go over and say, hey, knock it off, okay? The place got people in here. And you go back to your sit down, and maybe they're going to, all of a sudden you hear them cut loose again. And I'm talking about all the bad words, right?
Right.
So we just simply get up, go throw some handcuffs on these cats, and we booked them into jail for 415 of the Penal Code, disturbing the peace.
Right.
Can't do that anymore.
Yeah, no.
Not since
become
1970.
Common language. I mean, this profanity is common language on television everywhere.
Well, that goes back, doesn't it, to the morality in this country? I mean,
but it's not just the families. It's the media has to take a big responsibility for what's going on. I really believe that.
I'm agreeing with you. Let me ask you, Maria, as a teacher, what about the sport games the kids play, the video games and the stuff of that nature that depict all the shooting and what have you?
Violence. I think that's what I'm saying, media. When I cover media, I'm talking about everything.
Okay.
I'm talking about the Internet games. I'm talking about all of that. I think we've taken the fun out of life, just the plain old ordinary kickback fun, and everything has to have something to do. And I'm not, what do I want? It's the word I want. I'm sorry, I've been teaching all day. I just got in. I'm not so old-fashioned that I'm like, I don't ever want sex. I can't even talk about it. Not that type. But, I mean, it just gets to the point where you get real sick of it.
Right.
I don't need to. I want to watch a show that's just clean-cut fun. Whatever happened to that? Where'd that go?
Well, it's not here because it doesn't sell.
Yeah, I know.
No,
and if it doesn't have violence, I mean, the kids have gotten to the point where you can't even show a movie unless it has violence in it because that's what they think. That's exciting. I mean, we don't know how to. We think we have to have everything so fast, and we have to have everything violent. If it doesn't, I mean, you know what I'm saying? We get bored too easily.
I do. Now listen. We've identified, you and I, and we've identified the problem now. Let's assume that we identified the problem.
Now, what's the solution?
What is the teacher? I'm turning to you, teacher. What's the solution?
Well, I think for number one, we need to become much more tougher on our criminals.
Okay.
I think we're too easy on them. I think we're too easy on our students. I think our standards have just gone down. I think zero tolerance, which is what a lot of the schools are doing, is exactly what we need to do.
Right.
Not mess with them. Personally, if I could do it, kids that don't want to learn, get them out working someplace.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you smack them around a little bit.
No. Put them working. Put them in the fields. Put them on, put them in the packing houses. Put them someplace where they start realizing what an education is for.
Right.
Where they have to take and realize it. And I know that goes against everything that NAACP says. We got to take care of these kids. We can't. No, because what we're doing is we're perpetuating the problem that we've got, and we're making it worse.
Look at the example Jesse Jackson set. Speaking of the NAACP, take a look at the example that Jesse Jackson sent everybody with those kids out in Decatur, Illinois, that were fist fighting up there in the stands and beating up these people. And he goes in and said these kids are being treated wrongly and all this business. That whole thing sends a message as well that you can get away with it, and some adult's going to stand up for you, especially a guy like Jackson. He's the big figurehead now. You see, that sends the wrong message to other kids. Maria, for a teacher, you're taking a big position here because teachers sometimes are reluctant to come out and say the right thing or what's on their mind.
I mean, I'll get fired for it.
Well, no, you won't get fired because I know you're using an anonymous name, right?
Yeah.
No.
No.
Anyway, listen, I listen.
And the gun control. I don't have a problem with people owning guns, but I have a problem with us not educating our kids enough on how to use them and not taking care of them. When little kids are able to get a hold of guns and shoot their parents because they got mad at them.
Let me tell you, can I comment on that with you?
Sure.
Here's what's going on back east. The National Rifle Association, which I'm speaking for tonight,
Right.
has a program called the Eddie Eagle program. And it is a safety It's used, by the way, it's been used by 12 million people. It is one of the best in the nation. And the police, some police officers are on the teaching teams for the NRA, men and women in police work, and military people and others about gun, and teachers and all that are involved in it. It's one of the best in the nation. Not the only one, but one of the top ones in the nation. Do you know that in some schools on the East Coast, they won't let the NRA bring the Eddie Eagle program in to teach safety with weapons because it's not politically correct to do? The NRA is not a political correct name, so they won't let them into school with the Eddie Eagle program. So when you hear Clinton and his followers telling you that the NRA doesn't care about children's safety, we've been caring about it since 1988 when that program went into effect. And there's 12 million kids have been through the program. And they start when they're little toddlers and take them right through there to tell them, they have a little saying, don't touch it, call an adult. And they put that into their head from day one about guns. So trust me, there are programs available, but if you listen to the administration, they're leading you to believe that nobody's got anything going out here for it. And that's not the only program available. There's a lot of programs for kids.
Yeah, the problem is we keep wanting to put it in the schools, and we've got so many things put on us to teach kids.
No, they'll come in. They don't teach. This is like after school.
Okay, as long as it's out of the teaching day, because, we're being told we have to get all these core classes done, and then they keep sticking other classes on us.
No, don't tell me about teaching.
The teachers just can't handle any more responsibility as far as teaching outside things. We need to get back to the basics and really make sure we're teaching the basics.
Debs, I agree with you. You don't know how much I agree with you, and I'm going to thank you, by the way. I got to go another caller.
No problem.
Listen to me. I want to thank you for being the kind of person you are, and I'm proud to have you as a teacher in our community, Maria.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a teacher for you. Now, she's on top of things. Her students are going to be... Go to 1 here, he says. Tom's been hanging forever. Tom, welcome to the show, sir.
Hi, how you doing this evening, Jerry?
Very good, sir. How are you?
Good. Well, first off, I wanted to comment on the God thing, where in God we trust.
Yes.
It all comes down to the bottom line. If it's your religion, you practice it. It all went back, even if in your day, and I'm not saying you're old or anything, but, you had prayer in school. You had all this, where everybody was wholesome. It wasn't like everybody was beating each other up and killing each other, shooting everybody just because they're angry with, whatever the case may be. Now, second of all, the gun control thing. You're right. One of these days, we are not going to have any guns, and I'm going into law enforcement. One day, I might not even have a gun. They might just say, hey, guess what? You don't get no weapons, and everybody else is going to shoot each other up.
Now, Tom, you may be saying that as a possibility in the future, but that's already going on. I'm going to tell you how it's going on.
Okay.
I've been researching this. Trust me, when I do a program, I research the stuff, all right?
Right.
The UN, the United Nations, has a program in full force and effect right now to go in and monitor police departments. Not so far, not in the United States, because that's a hot potato.
Right.
But they've got the program to go into other countries and monitor their police departments and take an audit of what kind of guns their police departments are using, and then have a standing, if they're member nations, to tell them that they don't need this many guns or that kind of a gun. They've already set that up.
That's unbelievable.
Well, it's a fact. I mean, trust me, this is a fact. When this Clinton blew up Kosovo down there, and the Serbian people, the UN people went in there to their police departments, and they started immediately doing that very thing. Right. And so, in neighboring countries now, they're doing it. In some countries in Europe, they're doing it. They're very active in England, and now they're starting to scrutinize police departments. So, I pass the word out to the coppers in this country. You fight that till the day you die, because the local cops are our last front of protection. But there is a program. I'm sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry. It's a matter of if you do take the guns away, and it's going to be just like prohibition with alcohol. Everybody's going to try to get one more illegally than what they do now.
Right.
So what's the difference if you take it away from us? And I don't want to see that. My daughter's 9 months old, 10 months old right now.
Right.
I said when she gets older, it all relies on me as a parent to decide whether or not I want to teach my daughter how to shoot a gun. I want to be the responsible one to say, violence on TV, this is all fake. But the news hypes it up, to show all these guns and how all the advocates for gun control want to just take away everything from everybody. My thing is that I should be, as a parent, and it should be every parent's responsibility to take charge of their kid, because they're the ones that made that kid. You better be able to take charge and teach that kid, okay, if I want to teach you how to to use a gun, then I should be able the one to do that, not anybody else.
You're absolutely right. You're just being a man taking charge of your family, and that's
right.
The other thing that's not in vogue. By the way, on the news deal, I'm on a news station right here.
Right.
And the guy that owns this is a guy named Pappas.
Right.
And he would not allow this program to go forward unless this news station believed that we need to do more to prevent this gun takeover. I'm telling you right up front.
Right.
So we're on a news station, and I know what you mean, though. You're talking about the mainstream media back in Washington and these places that seem to be doing this stuff. But I just want to be clear that I'm on an all-news station here at night.
Right.
And if they thought I was not making a point out there, they want it out there, I'm sure they would say something about it, but they never have.
Right.
So we do.
I see your point, though.
You and I have a voice here tonight, Tom, thanks to the people that own this outfit.
Right. And I just wish that everybody that's listening right now, hey, if you've got a child, take responsibility of that child, and you need to show them what's right and what's wrong. Not the media, not cartoons, not anything like that. You, as a parent, need to take the responsibility. And I thank you for your time, Jerry.
Hey, Tom, thanks for the call. You're a good man, Tom. It's Tom checking in from Fresno. We're going to take a real short break. We have to do it right now. We'll be right back, and some of the other folks are going to have to wait through the top of the hour, maybe, Jason, but we're going to get back to them as quick as we can.
You're on the case with Jerry Pierce. Real crime in real time.
Inside the walls of prison, my body may be, but the Lord has set my soul free.
The Radio Detective.
I'm Jerry Pierce, the radio detective, back with you after the break. We got to squeeze this in. Hank in San Jose, California, come on aboard, Hank.
Yes, thank you. Reason I called is I think people have to be aware, as you were pointing out, of these media buzzwords, whether it's religious right, or the latest one is, of course, gun violence. I mean, it just pervades the media. I just don't understand that. The other one I've heard recently, of course, is at-risk child.
Yes.
And so they're always up to something, and you have to be aware of these terms, and people get manipulated by the vocabulary of the opponents of our constitutional rights. And another issue I happen to hear about today, I mean, apparently with this new gun ban that's gone into effect, a lot of shooters, particularly there's a teenage girl, age 16, that competes with an AR-15 rifle, and because of this ban that went into effect, she'd be illegal to even have that firearm.
Right.
And Don Parada, the person that's behind a lot of this stuff up here in Alameda County, he said, well, she should just go to another state to practice her sport.
Well, ironically, Hank, and I got to go to the break, but ironically, that's what Jim Henner was talking about in Canada. Some of the people are coming across the border from Canada into the United States to practice a shooting sport to compete in the Olympics.
Yep.
That's what it's come to.
Thank you.
Hank, thanks for the call from San Jose. That's Hank checking in. We're at the break. We got to go to the top of the hour break here. It's just a few minutes. The callers hang in tight, and we'll be right back to you after that.
A federal grand jury in Seattle has indicted 2 Algerian men on charges of conspiracy to commit international terrorism. Luis Cabrera reports there's been little word from the defense.
Defense attorneys are fairly tight-lipped. In fact, everyone concerned in this case is... We don't have any indication yet what the defense strategy is going to be, or whether these men will try to plea bargain.
One of the men, Ahmed Rassam, was arrested last month in Washington state, accused of trying to smuggle explosives into the U.S. from Canada. The second man is still at large. The grandmothers of Elian Gonzalez are expected to fly to New York from Cuba tomorrow. They want to plead their case that the boy should be returned to his father in Cuba. A lawyer representing Elian's Miami relatives says the family hopes the 6-year-old will get to see them. Former Senator Bill Bradley acknowledges he's had several episodes of an irregular heartbeat. Jerry Bodlander reports.
It's been more than a month since Bill Bradley disclosed he suffers from an irregular heartbeat, and the former senator now says he's had 4 more of the episodes, but he didn't say when they happened. Bradley says they'll have no impact on his run for the Democratic presidential nomination, calling the episodes regular and predictable. He acknowledges that 4 episodes in a month is more frequent than he's used to, but he refused to attribute them to the stress of the campaign. Bradley takes medicine for the condition and says he almost never experiences an irregular heartbeat if he takes the medicine regularly. Jerry Bodlander, Des Moines.
Presidential hopefuls are on the campaign stump in Iowa. Vice President Gore telling Iowans today they should be insulted by Bill Bradley's assessment that the state caucus system rewards entrenched power. Meanwhile, Bradley told senior citizens the health care reform is inevitable because his campaign restored the issue to the presidential agenda. This is AP Network News. Nothing's being ruled out as a possible cause of yesterday's fatal dorm fire at New Jersey's Seton Hall University. That word from county prosecutors. Meanwhile, sophomore Daniel Nugent, a resident assistant on the floor where the fire happened, describes what happened.
Freshman students living on the floor came out to help me, walking under the smoke to get through the hallways. We were all banging on doors until they had to leave for their own safety. Many people on my floor were helping.
The fire killed 3 students. A winter wallop for the east today as snow snarls air and ground traffic and closed schools throughout the region. The storm blew down from the upper Midwest, across the Appalachians, and up the coast. Up and down the east, airports reported delays and flight cancellations. Now more bitter cold is on the way. In Raleigh, North Carolina, the overnight wind chill is expected to drop to 10 degrees below zero. Raleigh doesn't see that too often. Senator Jesse Helms gives the UN a friendly scolding and gets one in return. Warren Levinson has more.
The conversation was polite, considering that the participants were the ambassadors of the UN Security Council and Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Jesse Helms. Helms urged acceptance of Washington's offer to pay almost $1 billion in back dues, provided the world body changes the way it spends money. That drew a mild rebuke from Peter van Valsum, ambassador of the Netherlands.
Under the United Nations Charter, which was ratified by the United States, a member state cannot attach conditions to its willingness to pay its assessed contributions.
After criticizing the UN for trying to overstep its authority, Helms invited all the ambassadors to Washington to continue the discussion of the U.S.-UN relationship. Warren Levinson.